Cole Harper was not the kind of man who expected surprises. He was careful, steady, and always prepared. He kept his boots polished, his translator device charged, and his cultural notes organized in a small green notebook that he carried everywhere. He had been living on the planet Varath for 8 months, working as a cultural liaison for the human embassy, and in those 8 months he had learned one very important thing about the Varathi people. Everything they did had a meaning. The way they folded their greeting cloth when they met someone new meant something. The color of the scarf they wore to a market meant something. Even the direction they tilted their head when they were thinking meant something. Cole had spent most of his 8 months on Varath trying to understand all of these small meanings, fill his green notebook with careful observations, and still feeling like he had only scratched the surface. So when the golden envelope arrived at the human embassy on a quiet Tuesday morning, Cole picked it up with both hands, the way he had learned was respectful, and carried it to his desk before opening it. The envelope was warm to the touch. That was the first thing he noticed. The Varathi used a special paper made from the dried leaves of the sunstone tree, and the leaves held heat the way a blanket held warmth. The writing inside was in Varathi script, long and flowing like water moving over smooth rock, and Cole had to run it through his translator 3 times before he was confident he understood what it said. It was an invitation to the royal wedding of Princess Ziara, daughter of the High Council of Varath, to the noble Dravith of the Eastern House. Cole sat back in his chair and read it again. He had been invited to a royal wedding. He was not a diplomat of high rank. He was not a senior official. He was a cultural liaison, which was a polite way of saying that his job was to observe, take notes, and try very hard not to offend anyone. He attended small community gatherings, visited local markets, and occasionally shared a meal with Varathi families who were curious about humans. He was not the kind of person who received invitations to royal weddings. He went down the hall to find Dana Flores, his supervisor at the embassy. Dana was a sharp woman in her 40s with short gray hair and a habit of speaking very quickly when she was processing new information. She read the invitation once, then twice, then handed it back to Cole and spoke very quickly. She said it was a goodwill gesture from the royal family. The Varathi High Council had been watching the human embassy for months, quietly deciding how much they trusted humans, and this invitation was their way of opening a door. It was not a personal invitation in the way humans thought of personal invitations. It was a political statement wrapped in golden paper. Cole was being invited because he was the human who had spent the most time learning about Varathi culture, and the royal family had noticed. Cole nodded and said he understood. Dana told him to study the wedding customs carefully and not to do anything unusual. Cole went back to his desk, opened his green notebook to a fresh page, and began reading everything the embassy database had on Varathi wedding ceremonies. There was quite a lot. The Varathi took weddings very seriously. A royal wedding in particular was a ceremony that could last an entire day, with many different stages, each one with its own meaning, its own movements, and its own rules. He read about the opening walk, where guests entered in a specific order depending on their connection to the family. He read about the blessing song, where everyone was expected to hum a low note for exactly 30 seconds. He read about the cloth exchange, the fire lighting, the water pouring, and the evening meal. He made notes on all of it. He practiced the hum. He chose his clothing carefully, a deep blue that the database said was considered a respectful color for formal occasions. He felt ready. The morning of the wedding was cool and bright. The royal palace of Varath sat on a wide hill at the edge of the capital city, and it was made of a pale stone that caught the morning light and turned it soft gold. Cole arrived with a small group from the embassy and followed the other guests through the outer gates. The palace gardens were full of Varathi families dressed in layered robes of green and silver, their long fingers decorated with thin rings of polished stone. The air smelled like the sunstone flowers that grew along every path, a smell Cole had grown to associate with Varath, sweet and slightly warm, like honey left in sunlight. The ceremony began in the great hall, and Cole followed along carefully. He hummed at the right moment. He stood when others stood. He bowed when others bowed. He kept his green notebook in his pocket and trusted his memory, not wanting to seem like he was treating the wedding as a research exercise. Everything went smoothly for the first 2 hours. Then came a moment that was not in the database. A council elder moved through the crowd carrying a wide stone bowl filled with small, smooth stones. Each guest reached in, took one stone, and placed it into a second bowl at the front of the hall. Cole watched the people around him do it. It looked like a blessing ritual. It looked simple. He reached into the first bowl, felt the warmth of the stone in his palm, and walked to the front of the hall with everyone else. He placed his stone in the second bowl. The hall went very quiet. Not the polite quiet of a ceremony moving from one stage to the next. A deep, sudden quiet, the kind that happens when something unexpected has occurred, and everyone in the room knows it except one person. Cole stood at the front of the hall with his hands still slightly extended over the bowl and looked around at 400 Varathi faces, all staring directly at him. At the front of the hall, the council elder slowly turned and looked at Cole with large, golden eyes that held an expression Cole could not immediately name. He would name it later, after Dana explained everything. The expression was equal parts shock, ancient tradition snapping into motion, and the particular look of someone watching a situation become very complicated very quickly. Cole smiled politely, the way he always did when he was not entirely sure what was happening. It was, he would later reflect, probably not the right response. The silence lasted for a long time, not seconds. Long enough that Cole could hear his own breathing, could hear the soft movement of 400 Varathi robes as people shifted to look at him, could hear the faint wind moving through the high windows of the great hall. Long enough that he slowly lowered his hand from above the bowl and stood up straight and tried to look calm, which was difficult because he had absolutely no idea what he had just done. The council elder standing beside the bowl was named Sorvan. Cole had read about him in the embassy database. He was the oldest member of the Varathi High Council, over 200 years old by Varathi counting, and he had presided over more royal ceremonies than any living Varathi. His face was deeply lined. His robes were the color of dark water, and his golden eyes were very still as he looked at Cole. He said one word in Varathanese. The translator device on Cole's wrist turned it into English. The word was witnessed. Cole did not know what that meant in this context. He looked around the hall hoping that someone nearby might give him a small signal, a shake of the head, a gesture, anything to help him understand what was happening. Nobody moved. Every face in the hall was turned toward him with the same wide, unblinking attention that Varathi gave to moments they considered historically significant. That was not a comforting observation. At the far end of the hall, on a low raised platform decorated with silver cloth and sunstone flowers, the wedding party stood in a still line. There was Dravith, the groom, tall and broad-shouldered in dark green robes, his expression unreadable. There were the attendants on both sides, also still, also watching. And there was Princess Ziara. Cole had seen images of the princess in the embassy files. She was considered very striking by Varathi standards, with pale gray skin, high, sharp features, and golden eyes that were slightly larger than average. In the images, she always looked composed, almost formal. Now, standing at the end of the hall with every eye in the room divided between her and Cole, she looked something else. She looked curious. Not angry, not embarrassed. Genuinely, openly curious. The way someone looks when they have just seen something they have never seen before and want to understand it. Cole found that slightly reassuring and slightly more alarming at the same time. Then the murmuring started. It began at the back of the hall and moved forward like a slow wave. Low Varathi voices speaking quickly to each other, and Cole's translator could only catch pieces of it because it was not designed to handle many voices at once. The pieces it caught were not helpful. Words like stone accepted and declaration made and law requires floated up from the noise and landed in Cole's ears with the weight of things he did not want to hear. Dravith stepped back. It was a small movement, just one step, but in a hall that had been completely still, it was very visible. The attendants near him exchanged looks. Sorvan raised one long hand, and the murmuring stopped immediately. He spoke again, this time at length, and Cole's translator worked hard to keep up. The translation came through in pieces, slightly delayed, the way translations always did when the language being spoken was formal and old. What the translator gave him was roughly this: that the bonding bowl was sacred, that only unmarried individuals of recognized standing could place a stone without breaking the law of the ceremony, that the stone once placed could not be removed or denied, and that the stone had been witnessed by the council and by all present. Cole's translator finished and went quiet. Cole stood very still and thought about Dana telling him to study the customs carefully and not to do anything unusual. He pulled out his communicator and sent her a message. He kept it short. He wrote, "There is a situation at the wedding. Please come to the palace." Dana's reply came back in under a minute. It said, "What kind of situation?" Cole looked at Sorvan. He looked at the bowl. He looked at 400 Varathi people watching him. He looked at Dravith, who had taken another small step back. He looked at Princess Ziara, who was still watching him with that open, careful curiosity. He wrote back, "The kind that needs you in person." While he waited, Sorvan spoke to him directly, in slow and careful Varathanese that the translator handled better. He told Cole that the ceremony could not continue in its current form until the matter of the stone was addressed. He told Cole that this was not a situation of anger, but a situation of law, and that Varathi law was very old and very specific. He told Cole that no outsider had ever placed a bonding stone before, not in all the centuries of Varathi royal ceremonies, and that the law had therefore never needed to address it. He paused. Then he said that the law would need to address it now. Cole nodded slowly and said that he understood, which was not entirely true but seemed like the right thing to say. Dana arrived 20 minutes later. She came through the side entrance of the Great Hall with her gray hair slightly windswept and her expression already doing the thing it did when she was processing a very large problem very quickly. She looked at Cole. She looked at the bowl. She looked at Sorvan. She looked at the wedding party, specifically at Dravith standing 2 steps back from where he had been standing before. She stood beside Cole and spoke quietly without moving her lips very much, a skill she had clearly developed over many years of diplomatic work. She said, "Tell me exactly what you did." Cole told her. He kept it simple. He described the elder moving through the crowd with the bowl, the guests reaching in and taking stones, the way it looked like a straightforward blessing ritual, and his decision to follow along with everyone else. Dana was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The stone you placed was not a blessing stone." Cole waited. She said, "It was a declaration stone. Only unmarried individuals of recognized standing place those. Placing one in the bonding bowl in front of the council means you formally declared your intent to bond with the one being honored." Cole looked at the bowl. He looked at Princess Ziara, who was still watching him with those large golden eyes. He said very quietly, "I did not know that." Dana said, "I know you did not know that." There was a pause. She said, "That is not going to make this simpler." At the front of the hall, Sorvan was watching them both with the patient stillness of someone who had been alive for 200 years and had learned that most problems eventually sorted themselves out, though he was not entirely sure this one would. Cole straightened his jacket, took a slow breath, and accepted the fact that his quiet, careful, well-prepared Tuesday had become something else entirely. Around him, the most important wedding in Varathi royal history waited. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small and unhelpful voice reminded him that he had practiced the hum perfectly. The private meeting room inside the Varathi palace was small and quiet. It had no windows. The walls were made of the same pale stone as the rest of the palace, but in this room the stone had been carved with long, thin patterns that looked like rivers seen from very high above. There was a low table in the center, 2 seats on either side, and a single lamp that gave off warm orange light. It was the kind of room that felt old, like many important conversations had happened inside it over many centuries, and the walls had absorbed all of them. Cole sat on one side of the table. Princess Ziara sat on the other. Between them on the table was a small clay pot of Varathi tea that neither of them had touched. Dana was waiting outside with Sorvan and 2 council members, giving the princess and the human exactly 1 hour to speak privately. That had been Ziara's request. She had made it clearly and firmly in front of the full council, and even Sorvan had not argued with her. Whatever else people said about the princess, Cole had already learned one thing about her in the last hour. She was not someone who waited for others to decide things for her. She spoke first. Her Varathanese was slow and deliberate, chosen for the translator to handle well, and Cole understood immediately that she was doing that on purpose. She was making it easy for him to understand her. That small consideration, in the middle of all the chaos of the afternoon, was something Cole noticed and did not forget. She said that she wanted to hear his account of what happened, not the council's version, not Dana's explanation. His own words, in the order they occurred to him. Cole told her everything. He started from the beginning, from the golden envelope arriving at the embassy, from his careful preparation and his green notebook, from his genuine effort to learn and respect Varathi customs. He told her about the elder moving through the crowd with the bowl, about watching the other guests and following along, about the warmth of the stone in his hand and the simple logic that had told him this was a blessing ritual. He told her that he had not seen his action as anything other than participation, as a guest trying to honor the ceremony he had been invited to. He told her he was sorry, not the careful, diplomatic kind of sorry that covers mistakes without fully admitting them, a plain, direct, honest sorry. He said that he had made a mistake, that the mistake had disrupted something important, and that he regretted it. Ziara was quiet for a moment after he finished. Then she said something that surprised him. She said that in her experience, people with political power did not admit mistakes. They explained them, or redirected them, or found ways to make the mistake sound like a decision. She said that she had sat in council meetings her entire life and could not remember the last time someone had stood up and simply said that they were wrong. Cole did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing, which turned out to be the right choice. She looked at him for a long moment with those large golden eyes. In the warm orange light of the small room, her gray skin had a soft quality to it, and her expression was open in a way it had not been in the Great Hall. In the Great Hall, she had been composed, formal, a princess at a ceremony. In this room, she was something closer to a person trying to figure out another person. She said, "Do you know why I requested this meeting?" Cole said he was not sure. She said that it was not to decide his punishment. The council would handle the legal matter according to Varathi law. She had requested this meeting because she wanted to ask him one question, and she wanted a truthful answer. Cole said he would answer truthfully. She asked him what he thought she should do. Cole was quiet for a moment. It was not the question he had expected. He had expected her to ask about human customs, or about the embassy, or about what his government would say. He had not expected her to ask him for his opinion on her own situation. He thought about it carefully before he answered. He said that he thought she should do whatever she genuinely wanted to do, not what the ceremony required, not what the council recommended, not what political logic suggested. He said that she was clearly intelligent and capable of making her own decisions, and that any situation that had been created by an honest mistake should not be used to take that choice away from her. He said that she deserved to decide her own life, and that an accident involving a confused human and a stone bowl should not be the thing that determined it. The room was very quiet after he said that. Ziara looked down at the untouched tea for a moment. Then she looked back up at him, and there was something different in her expression. Not softer exactly, clearer. She told him something then that she had not told the council, had not told her attendants, had not told anyone in the palace. She told him that she had not chosen Dravith. The council had chosen Dravith, and she had accepted because that was what the law required of her. And she had spent 2 years telling herself that acceptance was the same as choice. Cole listened without interrupting. She said that when Cole had placed the stone and the hall had gone silent, her first feeling, before confusion and before the awareness of ceremony breaking around her, had been something she was ashamed to name. Cole asked her quietly what it was. She said it was relief. The word sat between them on the table like something fragile that neither of them wanted to disturb. Cole understood then that this situation was not simply about a diplomatic mistake or a misread ceremony. Something real was happening in this small, carved room. Something that had nothing to do with stones or bowls or ancient law. A person who had been quietly carrying a very heavy thing had just set it down in front of him, and he understood that the right response was not to fix it or explain it or solve it. He picked up the small clay pot and poured 2 cups of Varathi tea. He pushed one gently across the table toward her. She looked at it. Then she picked it up. They sat in the quiet room and drank their tea, and outside the door the council waited, and the palace waited, and the whole complicated weight of Varathi law and royal ceremony waited with them. But in the room itself, for just a little while, none of that was the most important thing. Nobody had told Cole what to do after the private meeting. That was the thing about unexpected situations. They came with no instructions. There was no page in the embassy handbook that said what to do when a cultural liaison accidentally placed a declaration stone in a royal bonding bowl and then spent an hour drinking tea with the princess. Dana had given him a look when he came out of the meeting room, the kind of look that meant she had many questions and was choosing not to ask any of them yet. Sorvan had spoken quietly with Ziara for several minutes. The council members had gathered in a separate room, and Cole had been politely and firmly guided to a guest chamber in the east wing of the palace, and told that the council would deliberate and that he should remain close. So Cole remained close. The guest chamber was comfortable in a Varathi way, which meant the bed was low and firm, the ceiling was high, and every surface had that same carved river pattern he had noticed in the private meeting room. There was a narrow window that looked out over the palace gardens, and Cole stood at it for a long time that first evening, watching the sunstone flowers close slowly as the light faded, thinking about the day and trying to organize his thoughts the way he organized his green notebook, clearly in order, one thing after another. He was still standing at the window when a small sound came from the doorway. He turned around to find 3 young Varathi children standing at the entrance to his room, staring at him with enormous golden eyes. They were dressed in small versions of the formal robes he had seen in the Great Hall, which meant they were part of the royal household. The tallest one, who looked about 8 years old by human estimation, was holding something behind his back. Cole looked at them. They looked at Cole. The tallest one brought out what he was holding from behind his back. It was a flat wooden board with small carved pieces arranged on it in a grid pattern. Cole recognized it. He had seen it in the market district of the capital city. It was a Varathi strategy game called Vithara, something like chess but with pieces that could move in 3 directions instead of 2. Cole smiled and sat down on the floor. The 3 children came in immediately and sat across from him, and the tallest one set the board between them and began explaining the rules in fast, excited Varathanese that the translator struggled to keep up with. Cole listened carefully, asked questions when he did not understand, and let the children correct him when he moved a piece the wrong way. He lost the first game quickly and completely. He lost the second game slightly less quickly. By the third game, he was beginning to understand the pattern of it, and the children were leaning forward with great interest every time he considered a move. Word apparently traveled fast inside the palace, because by the following morning Cole had become something of a quiet attraction. He did not plan it. He was simply himself, in the way he had always been himself on Varath, curious and attentive, and genuinely interested in the people around him. He asked the palace staff questions about their work, not in an official way, but in the way of someone who finds other people interesting. He learned that the kitchen staff had been struggling for weeks with a problem of food storage. The Varathi preserved certain foods in sealed stone containers, but the containers had been cracking in the night because of temperature changes between the warm day and the cool evening. 3 batches of prepared food for the post-ceremony celebration had already been lost. Cole thought about it for a few minutes and then asked if he could see the storage room. The kitchen staff looked at each other and then led him through a low doorway into a cool underground room lined with shelves. Cole walked slowly along the shelves, looking at the containers, pressing his hand against the stone walls, feeling the temperature difference between the upper and lower shelves. He asked a few questions about when the cracking happened and which containers broke most often. Then he suggested something simple. He suggested moving the containers away from the outer walls, where the temperature changed most, and placing them closer to the center of the room, where the temperature stayed more even through the night. He also suggested wrapping the containers in the thick woven cloth that the palace used for table coverings, which would slow down the temperature change reaching the stone. The kitchen staff tried it that night. In the morning, no containers had cracked. The head kitchen worker, a stout older Varathi woman named Aveth, found Cole at breakfast and stood in front of him for a moment without speaking. Then she placed a small sunstone flower on the table beside his plate, which Cole had learned was a Varathi way of expressing sincere gratitude without making a person feel embarrassed by open praise. He thanked her quietly, and she went back to her kitchen. Dana heard about the kitchen solution by midday and came to find Cole in the garden where he was sitting with the 3 children again, losing at Vithara for the 4th time. She sat beside him and watched the game for a moment. She said that Sorvan had mentioned the kitchen matter to the council that morning. She said it in a neutral voice, the way she said things when she was not sure yet whether they were good or bad. Cole moved a game piece and one of the children made a sound of excitement and immediately captured it. He asked Dana how the council deliberations were going. She said they were complicated. Varathi law had many layers and the matter of the stone had no clear precedent, which meant the council was essentially writing new law as they deliberated, and old councils did not write new law quickly. Cole nodded. Dana was quiet for a moment and then said that Ziara had spoken to the council again that morning. She had gone in without invitation and spoken for a long time, and the council had listened to all of it without interrupting her, which Dana said was extremely unusual. Cole asked what she had said. Dana said she did not know the full content, but that Sorvan had come out of the council room afterward and asked one of the embassy staff a question that had never been asked before in the history of the human embassy on Verath. Cole looked at her. Dana said that Sorvan had asked what kind of people humans were, in general, as a species, when nobody was watching them and there was nothing to gain from being good. Cole looked back at the Vithara board. The youngest child, a small girl with wide eyes and a serious expression, reached across and very gently moved one of Cole's pieces to a better position, showing him where he should have put it. Cole looked at the child, then at the board, then at Dana. He said he hoped somebody had given Sorvan a good answer. Dana said she thought the council was finding the answer on their own. Outside the garden walls, the capital city of Varath went about its afternoon, and inside the palace, the old council deliberated over ancient law, and Cole sat on the warm stones of the garden and lost another game of Vithara to a child who was teaching him how to play while she beat him, and somewhere in the palace, Ziara was doing something that no one had fully expected her to do. She was making her own choice. And the palace, stone by stone and room by room, was beginning to feel the quiet weight of something shifting. The council deliberated for 3 days. Cole knew this because he counted them. He counted them the way a person counts things when they are waiting and have no control over the outcome, carefully and with great attention, as if the counting itself was doing something useful. 3 mornings of waking up in the low Varathi bed and looking at the carved ceiling. 3 afternoons in the garden with the children and the Vithara board. 3 evenings standing at the narrow window watching the sunstone flowers close in the fading light. On the morning of the 4th day, Sorvan came to find him. Cole was in the kitchen at the time, not because anyone had asked him to be there, but because Aveth had started saving him a cup of the warm grain drink the kitchen staff made every morning, and he had started coming to collect it. And somewhere in those 3 days, it had become a quiet routine. He was sitting on a low bench near the back of the kitchen with his cup when Sorvan appeared in the doorway, his dark robes very still, his golden eyes moving around the kitchen until they found Cole. Avith straightened immediately and made a small, formal gesture with both hands. Sorvan made the gesture back to her, which Cole had learned was something elders did not always bother to do with kitchen staff. Avith noticed. Cole noticed her noticing. Sorvan looked at Cole and said that the council was ready. Cole put down his cup, thanked Avith quietly, and followed the old elder through the long, pale corridors of the palace toward the council hall. The council hall was larger than the private meeting room, but smaller than the great hall where the wedding ceremony had taken place. It had high ceilings and long, narrow windows that let in columns of morning light. The 5 members of the High Council sat in a curved row on one side of the room. Dana was already there, standing to the left, her expression carefully neutral. Dravith was present as well, standing to the right with 2 members of his family house, his posture relaxed in a way it had not been during the wedding ceremony. Cole stood in the center of the room and waited. Sorvan took his seat at the center of the curved row and was quiet for a moment, looking at the space in front of him the way very old people sometimes look at things, seeing more than what is physically there. Then he spoke. He spoke for a long time, in the formal Varathi that the translator handled carefully and slowly, and Cole listened to every word. Sorvan said that the council had examined the matter of the stone from every angle that Varathi law provided. He said that the law was old and had been written for Varathi circumstances, and that it had not imagined a situation in which an outsider from another world entirely would participate in a sacred ceremony out of genuine respect and honest misunderstanding. He said that the law, when examined closely, was not only about the action of placing a stone, it was about the intention behind the action and the conduct that followed it. He paused. He said that in 3 days, while the council deliberated, they had received accounts from the kitchen staff, from the royal household attendants, from the young children of the royal family, and from Princess Ziara herself. He said that all of these accounts described the same person in the same way. Someone who listened carefully, someone who admitted when he was wrong, someone who helped without being asked and without expecting anything in return. Someone who sat on garden stones and lost at Bathara and let a child move his pieces to better positions without embarrassment. One of the other council members, an older woman with silver robes, said something brief. The translator gave Cole the words, "A person reveals themselves when they believe no one important is watching." Sorvan nodded slowly and continued. He said that the council had also heard from Dravith, who had spoken honestly and with considerable courage. Dravith had told the council that the arrangement between his house and the royal family had been one of politics and not of genuine bonding, and that he had accepted it out of duty but had carried his own quiet reservations for 2 years. He had asked the council to release the arrangement with full respect to both houses, and the council had agreed. Cole looked at Dravith. Dravith met his eyes and made a small, formal gesture. Not a bow exactly, more like an acknowledgement between 2 people who had both been caught in the same complicated situation and had both tried to handle it with honesty. Cole made the gesture back. Sorvan said that the council had reached its ruling. The room was very quiet. He said that the stone placed by Cole Harper of the Human Embassy could not be treated as a declaration under Varathi law because the intent behind it had been one of respect and participation, not of formal claim. The stone was therefore to be recorded in the ceremonial records not as a declaration, but as something the Varathi language had a specific word for, a word the translator rendered as bridge offering, meaning an action that connected 2 things across a gap without belonging to either side. He said that Cole Harper was to be given a title, not a bonding title, a cultural title, Friend of the Varathi House, the first non-Varathi in recorded history to receive it. Dana made a very small sound beside him that was not quite a breath and not quite a word. Sorvan stood, which meant the full council stood, and he looked directly at Cole and said that the Human Embassy had sent many people to Varath over the years, people with excellent credentials and careful training and polished boots, and that all of them had tried to understand Varath from the outside. He said that Cole had done something different. He said that Cole had simply tried to be a decent person inside a place he did not fully understand, and that this, in the Council's view, was worth more than perfect knowledge. Cole stood in the morning light of the Council Hall and did not trust himself to say anything for a moment. Then he thanked the Council. Simply and directly, the way he did everything, without extra words. Ziara was not in the Council Hall for the ruling. Cole had not expected her to be. But when he walked back through the palace corridors afterward with Dana beside him, he passed the entrance to the garden and saw her standing near the sunstone flowers with the 3 children around her. The youngest one, the serious little girl who had moved his Vithara pieces, was pulling at Ziara's sleeve and pointing in Cole's direction. Ziara looked up. She did not wave. She did not call out. She simply looked at him with those large golden eyes and made a gesture he had not seen before, both hands open and turned slightly upward, a quiet gesture, like something being offered or released. He did not have the translation for it in his green notebook. He made a mental note to find out what it meant. Dana walked beside him in silence for a while as they made their way back toward the embassy wing of the palace. Then she said that she needed to file her report to Earth Command and that she had been thinking about how to write it for 3 days. Cole asked her what she had decided to say. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said that she was going to write that the human embassy on Varath had achieved something in 4 days that years of formal diplomatic effort had not managed, and that it had happened because one person had made an honest mistake and then handled it with complete integrity from the first moment to the last. She said she was also going to recommend continued cultural exchange. Cole said that sounded right. She said she was also going to recommend that Cole Harper attend fewer alien weddings without supervision. Cole looked at her. She was not smiling exactly, but the corners of her eyes were doing something that on Dana Flores was the same as a smile. He said that seemed fair. They walked out through the palace gates into the warm morning air of the Varathi capital, and behind them the pale stone palace sat on its hill, catching the light and turning it gold. The same as it had on the morning of the wedding, the same as it had for centuries before that. But something inside it was different now. Something small and quiet and real had changed. The way things changed not because of great events or powerful decisions, but because one ordinary person in a difficult situation chose, again and again, to simply be good. Cole put his hand in his pocket and felt the worn cover of his green notebook. He had a lot of new things to write down.